What's up, everyone? It's me, T-Head. Today, we're going to be doing a lottery-only mock draft for the 2024 NBA draft. And if you're new to the channel, I post NBA videos. So if you are interested in that at all, make sure to stay around, leave a subscription, leave a like, and let's get right into it. So with the first pick, obviously the Atlanta Hawks had that miraculous jump up to get number one, which no one saw coming. They had very low odds to do so. And I think the consensus is Alex Sarr, which is what I'm going to do. And I know it's kind of boring to just go with the consensus, but when I look at the upside and floor of a guy like Alex Sarr, I think alongside Trae Young, that's a guy you want. When I look at Alex Sarr, I see someone who's going to be good defensively, has the body of a good NBA player. And so pairing that up with Trae Young, who's a great lob thrower, and Alex Sarr, who can be that lob threat. Obviously, they have Clint Capella, but realistically, if you think Clint Capella is like a core piece, that's not it. And there's been a lot of rumors and circulation on who the Hawks are going to trade, so I think Sarr just is the most likely to fit in any landscape, whether they trade Trae Young, whether they trade DeJounte Murray. It doesn't matter. I think he can fit on any team with his unique length and size and shot blocking. If you look at the stats, it's not impressive, but this is more of a project and someone who has a very safe floor. Next up is the Washington Wizards, and I'm going to go with something that isn't consensus. If you look at all the mock drafts, really, it's consensus. It's Zachary Rissache, and he's somewhat. I'll dive into him later. But I just think Matas Buzelis is one of the highest upside players in this draft, and I don't think he gets talked about enough. He was projected to be maybe number one going into the year, and the G League Ignite was a very poor situation for everyone involved, whether that be Matas Buzelis, Ron Holland, Izan Almanza. It ended this year because of how poorly this year went. And when I look at that situation, I can't help but think, how would they have done in a good situation like college basketball? And I look at Matas Buzelis, and I just see so many shades of Franz Wagner, a lengthy forward who can handle the ball, play make, and just has a unique skill set that you won't find like anywhere else. And I think a guy like Risa Shea, who is the projected number two, you can find that skill set in other players. And Matas, I think, his ball handling, his playmaking, the shooting isn't really there yet, but I think that'll come. I think that all is very unique and will lead to him having a. I don't know if he's going to be a superstar, but I think he'll be an all-star one day for sure. The Houston Rockets, there's a lot of different ways you could go with this. The Rockets are in a very odd spot. They have a nice young core with guys like Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Amen Thompson, but then you have the evidence of what happened last offseason, where they brought in Fred VanVleet, they brought in Dylan Brooks, and then they traded for Steven Adams during the regular season. Didn't even mention Alperen Sengun, their all-star. Whoops, did not mean to do that. But there's a lot of different avenues they could go. Personally, this is tough, but I'm going to go with Zachary Rissache. And the reason being is I just think he's going to be a really good role player. And you look at the catch and shoot ability of him, and the issue with him, for me, and I think a lot of other people, is if you have a guy who is known for his catch and shoot and being an off-ball player, you want them to be consistent. Like a odd example, but like a Danny Green. And he was very inconsistent all year. He was very hot and cold, wasn't consistent at all. So that pushed him down a lot of people's draft boards, I want to say. That being said, I think this is a very safe pick. I think there is upside there, but just his ability to fit in with most situations in the NBA is going to bode well for him in this draft process. So a team like Houston that's shown they want to compete right now wants to bring in a guy that can fit in any mold of any team, because I'm sure they'll make trades. And I just think it's a safe pick. San Antonio Spurs, obviously the talk of the league recently, Wembanyama. There's a lot of different avenues they could go. A guy like Rob Dillingham makes a lot of sense. A guy like Nikola Topic and a guy like Reed Shepherd, all almost the lead guards in this draft, I want to say, all make a lot of sense. And I'm going to go with Reed Shepherd. And if you don't know anything about Reed Shepherd, he is just the embodiment of a winning player and someone who's consistent, very efficient, great defender. And you might be thinking, like, if he's all this, why isn't he the number one pick? And you look at 6'3" guards in the NBA, and there just has been a dying mold for them as of recently. You look at the old players like an Avery Bradley who's a shooting guard, and those players just you don't see them as often, especially at the shooting guard position, which Reed Shepherd was in college. Granted, he can play point guard for sure, and I think he'll be interchangeable in the NBA. But I think people are just overthinking the fact that he was so consistent and so efficient and really can do it all. I mean, if you watched him at all in Kentucky, he had great shooting, great defense. I mean, I think he averaged like 2 steals a game, and honestly, sneaky athletic. And I know that's kind of the joke with white guys is sneaky athletic, but he had one of the biggest rises in the combine, I want to say, with his 40-inch vertical. So a team like the Spurs that wants to build a winning roster around Wemby right now, you got to bring in those players sooner than later. And you're going to look back and realize we should have gone with the safe floor of Reed Shepherd, who's going to be a for sure winner in the NBA, rather than a guy like Rob Dillingham, who's an upside project. So for that reason, I'm going Reed Shepherd, just because I think he'll help Wembanyama get the ball and will help them win next season. Detroit Pistons, the team that always gets screwed. I mean, they just tough situation. They drafted Asar Thompson last year. They have Cade Cunningham, obviously, Jaden Ivey. Those are probably the only guys I consider that much in their core right now. Maybe you could throw Jalen Duren in there, but just personally, I don't know if I see him as that type of core piece. And you don't go guard here, which a lot of the top players right now are. And this is a bit of a hot take, but I'm gonna go Dalton Connect. And the reason being is obviously the shooting. If you ever watched him at Tennessee, this guy's a lights out shooter. One of the best I've ever seen in the draft, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people are pushing him back due to his age, and they see him as solely this catch and shoot type of guy. Now, if you watched him, he averaged 22 points in college at 46% field goal percentage, which is obviously really solid. But when I watched him, I just saw a very unique way of scoring the ball, where he got this mold of being only a catch and shoot type of guy, but he really was dynamic with the ball. He could handle it, could score for himself and create his own shot, which I think people are overlooking. People are putting him in this category where he's just going to be a for sure Grayson Allen, that's solely catch and shoot guy, but in reality, I think this guy has a ceiling of like a Devin Booker. And I know that's going to make people mad, but it's just my thought process. When I watched him, I think the defense is a concern, certainly, but I think he's got great athleticism. He can shoot the hell out of the ball, and he just can create his own shot better than people think. So for that reason, a team like Detroit that has, I don't want to say missed, but a few of their picks have been underwhelming. They need a guy that's going to be a for sure NBA player who will help them win, and that for me is Dalton Connect. 6th pick, the Charlotte Hornets. Only two guys I think you consider here are Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball as part of their core. For that reason, I'm going to have them take Ron Holland. And it might be a little redundant drafting 2 forwards in the past 2 years with their picks. However, when I look at Ron Holland and the situation he was put in, it's the same thing with Modest Buzelis, where they were put in weird situations with the G League Ignite, and they're both kind of similar, where their biggest weakness is their shooting. Now, I can't defend Ron Holland's shooting. I don't think it's good. And a lot of people are gonna be like, why would they draft someone who can't shoot? And I think just his athleticism and his tenaciousness on the defensive end and hustle is just gonna take him places in this league. I think he's one of the highest upside players in this whole draft, and for that reason, a team that needs a lockdown type of guy. I mean, you have the scores with Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. I don't think you're really worried about the offense, and then you have Mark Williams who can hold down the paint. I think a true lockdown on the perimeter is what they really need. And he's just going to come in, automatically help them on the defensive end, and bring them athleticism and hustle that they don't have much of right now. The Trailblazers, I think this is pretty easy for me. Donovan Clingan. Kind of getting underrated this whole process. 20 years old, 7'2", two-time champion in college. I just think good player. Like, DeAndre Ayton isn't it. And I say that respectfully, but he just isn't it. And Donovan Clingan isn't for sure an upside swing where he's going to be an all-star one day, but his shot blocking is one of the best I've seen in college basketball. And I think his offense is somewhat underrated. Only 13 points in college, but if you're playing with a guy like Scoot Henderson, he's going to find ways to get his center involved under the rim where he can just give him some layup dunks, all those types of things. So I think you just take him for the defense, the fact that he's almost for sure going to be a good rotational player in the NBA, and I think you run away just like, we have Scoot Henderson, who's our guy. Let's get him guys that can contribute right now. And that's what Donovan Clingan is to me. The Spurs, with their second pick in the top 10, they took Reed Sheppard with their fourth. For that reason, I'm not going to have them go Rob Dillingham or a guard here, which the top three are. I'm going to have them go Cody Williams, who, if you didn't watch in college, is the younger brother of Jalen Williams on the Thunder. And he is someone that is going to be put in this category of only a 3-and-D wing, which is obviously a very valuable and coveted position in the NBA that a lot of people just get put into that mold. And I don't agree with that. I think he for sure is. He can be, that if that's what he wants to be in the NBA. But he showed skill set beyond that. He was really efficient in college. Coming into the year, he was one of the highest ranked prospects. So when you put a guy like this in a mold of only catch and shoot threes and defense, while he is good at those things, he can be more than that. And the Spurs are in a need for wings right now. I mean, you have Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell, but reports have said they want to move on from Keldon Johnson. And I just think Cody Williams is another guy that's going to be a for sure NBA player, like Reed Sheppard. So you just take that and don't look back and are very happy with it all around. And if he can be 80% of what his brother is, which I think it's kind of dumb people mold them together just because they're brothers. They don't play alike that much. But if he can be 80% of what his brother is, you are ecstatic if you're the Spurs. So for me, this is not a home run swing, but it's a nice double where you get a nice upside and you get a good floor as well. Now the Memphis Grizzlies, very fun team. A lot of talent on this roster. Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. Obviously the core, but then you look at who they drafted last year and had last year, and G.G. Jackson really put himself in that discussion as a core member of their team, along with Vince Williams. So this team has shown an ability to bring in players that are underrated or underseen and develop them. So what does this team need? And it's hard to say one thing. I think a center would have made, if Donovan Clingan was there, I think that would have been a home run hit. But I'm going to have Rob Dillingham go here. Reason being is the second unit is a little rough right now for them. They have Marcus Smart and Ja Morant running the guard positions starting. But after that, you don't really have a backup guard. And I think Rob Dillingham is going to be almost a Emmanuel Quickley type player in the league. And I'm not a big fan of this type of mold of player. And the reason being is you have Rob Dillingham getting compared to guys like Jamal Crawford, Jordan Clarkson, all these guys are really good bucket getters, but then you have the other side of this mold of prospect where what if he's a Bones Highland? And I think it's one of the prospects, the type of prospects where a lot of people think it's a safe play, but in reality there's a lot of misses when you draft someone like this. But I do think if he is what they want him to be, he's going to be a great piece where if they're trying to compete for a championship this year where they are, having that depth is really important, and if you can get a young rookie to do that for you, you're really happy with that. And his unique scoring, he's a really great shooter. He's gonna be able to run a second unit pretty well. So a team trying to win a championship needs that depth, and that's why you go him. All right, the Jazz, my favorite team. Lots of different routes you can go here. They have one of the most interesting off seasons in the entire NBA, in my opinion. Nikola Topic is just staring them down right now, and I don't think you can. You can miss on him. I mean, you have Keontae George, who obviously had a stellar rookie season, and a lot of people are really excited for him, and rightfully so. But when a guy like Nikola Topic, who's a 6'7" point guard, handles the ball really well, can play make, just falls to your lap, I don't think you can pass that up. And trust me, I'm a big Keontae George guy. But drafting another guard doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to just eradicate Keontae George in the lineup. I think these two can coexist. Maybe that means one of them getting pushed to the bench. Maybe that means Keontae George being pushed to the shooting guard. However, I think they can coexist, and you can be happy with the 1-2 punch of two guys that can play make, but you also have Keontae George, who's a great bucket getter. And Nikola Topic is not as much of that. A lot of people get compared to LaMelo Ball, but that's kind of who he is coming out, is that type of playmaking big guard that the NBA has gravitated towards recently. And a lot of the time they don't pan out like don't pan out, but haven't lived up to that expectation like a Dyson Daniels, just for example. But just the upside of a guy like Nikola Topic, you can't miss on. The Bulls, they are ecstatic. Stephon Castle, home run swing for them, and it's just shocking he fell this far. There have been reports he doesn't want to go to a team with the starting point guard, but I think if you're the Bulls, you're like, this guy's too talented to pass up on. You take him, you're getting great defense, you're getting great off-ball movement. The shooting isn't quite there yet, and that's the biggest issue, and you'll find that in a lot of players this draft, and just in general in the draft. But I think if he hits his absolute ceiling, he's going to be like a Jimmy Butler. And if you're getting Jimmy Butler at the 11th pick, you're really happy. Now, do I think he hits that upside? Not necessarily. But even if he doesn't, you have a big guard who's a really great defender, is willing to do the dirty work, can rebound, can move off ball, really good with cuts. And that's just, NBA teams are always looking for players like that. So if you're able to get one with that upside, you can't pass up on it, realistically. So they're really happy with that. All right, the OKC Thunder, obviously trying to compete for a championship here. Didn't quite do what they were hoping for in the playoffs this year after a really encouraging regular season. And I think Thunder fans can all agree they needed rebounding. Quite honestly, I mean, Chet's a really good player, but he's a smaller, not height-wise, but muscle-wise, smaller center. So you kind of want to surround him with someone who can rebound and is a bit bigger. For that reason, I'm going Tijon Salon. And this guy is someone that is somewhat being overlooked just because he plays overseas, and I can acknowledge it's hard to watch players that play overseas. And what I have seen from him is, I think he's going to be Aaron Gordon. And you look at how important Aaron Gordon's been on the Nuggets run over these past few years, and that is one of the greatest trades over the past few years, and for not just for the Nuggets, but for the whole league, in my opinion. and how impactful he's been playing with good players around him, being able to adjust to that, having a skill set where everyone around you can make you better, even if you're not the most talented. That's what he reminds me of. Big body guy, can shoot the ball, is pretty athletic. I don't want to say he's like a freak athlete, but he's really athletic. And I just think, is he ever going to be a star? Probably not. But I think he's going to be a really good role player, which the Thunder need. I mean, they have good depth, but I think it got a little exposed these playoffs. Some of their players, like Josh Giddey. I mean, Gordon Hayward didn't play at all, really, but Gordon Hayward, and they've got to fill those gaps in the rotation. I think this guy's a great player that is, while he's young and has some upside, is still going to be able to help right now. The Kings, this is just a fit I'm in love with, is Jacoby Walter. And the reason being is you're likely losing Malik Monk in free agency, so you need to replace some of that scoring and shooting. This guy is someone who can shoot the ball really well and has some underrated upside as a ball handler and shot creator. He's getting put in this mold of a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, where he's just a 3-and-D wing, which in college, that's kind of what he was. But I saw enough flashes in college where I can say I think this guy's going to be able to get buckets for himself in the NBA. And being able to replace Malik Monk's scoring and shooting with that is really valuable. You can have lineups with De'Aaron Fox, Walter, Keegan Murray, Sabonis, and whoever else they add this offseason, because I'm sure they're gonna make some moves. The spacing that allows you to have with a slashing point guard like De'Aaron Fox is just something that's really valuable. And he's one of my players in this draft. One of my favorites, so I don't think you can pass up on him there. Final pick in the lottery, the Trailblazers. Really, really a lot of things you can do. I know I've said that a lot, but this draft is really open where you can reach, and people aren't going to say it's a reach, as in other drafts. For example, last year, there's certain players where if you would have taken them earlier, they would have been seen as reaches, and maybe GMs would have lost their jobs because of that, but I don't think you can say that this draft. I picked Donovan Clingan at 7. You've got to fill these forward spots, in my opinion. I'm going Tristan da Silva. And this might be a little hated on just because he's a 22-year-old and doesn't have that much upside necessarily, but I've always been a big fan of just bringing in the role players early so they can grow with the stars and build that type of chemistry. And if you can get this lengthy defender who can shoot the ball really well, can really do a lot of stuff that NBA teams are looking for, kind of the gritty stuff that is coveted at like the trade deadline for contenders. I feel like every trade deadline these contenders are trying to bring in these guys that'll do all the dirty work that their current players aren't willing to do, and I think that's what Tristan da Silva is. Can shoot the ball, can really do most everything on the basketball floor. And for that reason, getting that role player early on to build a relationship with the core of Scoot Henderson, Donovan Clingan, you're really happy that they can all grow together. And that's it. Lottery only mock draft. Let me know what you thought. Let me know any things you agree with, disagree with. If you liked the video, consider subscribing, leaving a like. Do all that for me, please. Really helps the channel. And if this does well enough, I'll do a full first round mock draft. Obviously, this went a little longer than I thought. Kind of just yapped a lot, but I think it's kind of necessary in a mock draft to explain your choices. So if you enjoyed, please let me know anything I could have done better, and